All right, we are good to go. Common Sense Ohio coming at you this week. It is September 13, 2024. It is already the fall. Football has begun, and we are kicking off. Is it the last quarter yet? Yeah, we're getting close to the fourth quarter for you accountants out there. Anyway, we've got a guest in the studio. We'll get to that in a second. But the typical stuff, commonsenseohioshow.com. You can go check us out on our website, commonsenseohioshow.com. Norm's blog lives there. My blog lives there, although if you look for my blog, you will find nothing because I haven't blogged on anything. Brett's got a few things, I believe. At any rate, that's where you can that's where you can subscribe and click. It'll take you to YouTube and Rumble and all the other places. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, get it, do it, share it. It helps us because it is true that we come here week in and week out and we do this for nothing because we like it. And the goal here is to share a common sense viewpoint at the round. Norm, there's a reason the table's round.
Yes.
Right. Because we don't want to be at odds with anybody. We want to share ideas.
Yes.
We want to exchange common sense ideas. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always right. And it doesn't mean that you're always right or vice versa.
A circle is an infinite number of angles. And there's an infinite number of opinions that we can bring to a round table.
Yeah. So there you go.
There you go.
Now, if you think that you can hang with Norm at the round table.
You can't.
I have a hard time with it. I know Brett has a hard time with it. But anyway, if you think you can hang, you just check us out, commonsenseohioshow.com. Send us a note. We get notes. And if you think you're going to out-comment Norm on the social media, good luck with that too.
Right.
But we welcome the exchange. Brett is over in the producer's chair today because we have a guest, Bella Matta, right?
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Such a cool name.
Bella means beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that fits.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
If I may be so bold.
So Bella you're a local law student.
Yes.
Where do you go to law school?
I go to Capital Law.
Capital Law. What year?
I'm a 2L.
2L. So that's fancy talk. For those who aren't in law school, they talk about 1L, which means your first year in law school, 2L or 3L.
And that's your alma mater, Steve.
I went to Capital University Law and Graduate Center when it was still at the old Grange building downtown here or on South High. Yeah.
Yeah.
Graduated in 95.
Okay.
So old.
Yeah.
God, so old.
In November of 95, I was sworn in. Yeah, that's right. November of 95, I was sworn into the bar at Ohio. So anyway, so law school is an interesting endeavor. And where are you from initially?
I'm from Cleveland, 20 minutes outside Brecksville, Ohio.
Brecksville. What's the mascot in Brecksville?
We were the Brecksville Bees.
The Brecksville Bees.
Cool.
Yes.
Like, is the mascot like a guy wearing a bee suit the whole 9 yards?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Love it.
That's awesome. So anyway, you've got a political interest and you are a law student and you've got lots of other stuff going on. And I thought what we do is just sort of kick it off, Norm. I mean, I think, and I do want to ask you about Springfield because not that you're an expert in Springfield, but you've done a little bit of research there too, so we'll get to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's how this works. Norm gives us stuff to talk about, and then we talk about it.
Or not.
Or not.
Or not.
If
It's a boring topic, Steve will say, yeah, let's talk about this instead. So, and that's fine. So we just kind of throw pie at the wall and see what sticks.
But you know what I'm going to do before we do that? I want to talk to you a little. I was going to do this later, but we'll just do it now. So
okay.
Now, obviously, you know that Common Sense Ohio, people would call us like super conservative or whatever. I don't consider myself ultra conservative or radical conservative or anything else, but I think I just look at this as a common sense approach.
Right.
So without even asking your political views, like what is it like in law school? What's the political environment in law school with the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans? How's it work?
It's definitely more left leaning. I think a lot of people would expect that, but I think the Republicans are just more quiet.
Yeah.
But I did go to a Republican club meeting the other day and the whole room was packed. So I think people are actually coming out now. But yeah, my first year I went to one and there were like 6 people there. So I think people are starting to, voice their opinions more. I
first learned about the Federalist Society in law school. A law professor introduced me to it at one point. I went out to a convention or one of their events.
Con law professor?
No, as a visiting professor, Brad Smith. You know Brad Smith.
Yeah, I know Brad Smith.
Yeah,
I know of him.
Yeah,
yes.
And he was a phenomenal guy, genius. I mean, an absolute genius. But he was
the former head of the Federal Elections Committee, Commission.
And did a lot of commentary and recent developments in some of the things that have been going on. But so, I mean, is it, but, from my perspective, there's a way to teach the law that really is somewhat irrelevant, or there's got to be some history there between the two sides. But is it what's your experience there? Is it getting crammed down like maybe we hear in undergrad, or is it just the cases are the cases?
I have to say, I think the professors do a really good job at not like speaking their political opinions. I think they kind of keep it out of the classroom. It's more the students.
Really?
Yeah. I think the professors are pretty good about it.
My con law professor, for example, was a screaming liberal, but he was very funny, old guy, and he took apart the Roe v. Wade decision and said it was utter bullcrap. And it kind of like Ruth Bader Ginsburg did, and basically said it's intellectually dishonest, the decision. And he actually thought it was going to be overturned just because it was underpinned by nothing. So there are those professors that are able to bifurcate their own feelings from their job teaching law. And, you know, that's really when you feel like that's a great professor.
Right.
And he was.
Right.
You know, because we didn't have to agree. It's just teach me.
Right.
So, I forgot to mention, though, Steve, Brad Smith is a professor at Capitol.
I think he might have retired. I don't remember.
No, he's still on. Well, he's on the website at Capitol Law School.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know. I don't know what classes he teaches.
When I was there, he taught adjunct, and it was, I think, some form of civil procedure or advanced civil procedure, or maybe employment law or employment litigation, something like that.
I don't know. Elections law is pretty hot right now.
Yeah, he might have different
Can you imagine, right? With all of these, like Robert F. Kennedy wanting to get taken off of ballots and stuff like that. Brad Smith, your professor, if he teaches a course, that might be really interesting.
Yeah, he's a sharp guy.
Elections
I haven't
law.
had him.
Okay.
He might still be there, but I think we just have a lot to cover in one class period that it's hard to be discussing all these current political topics also.
Do they still use the Socratic method? You know, like do they call on students?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So just so everybody understands, the Socratic method means it's like this question and answer form of teaching where the professors never tell you the answer. They ask you what the answer is and make you comment on it. And then they sort of zero in through this, I call it cross-examination, but they'll just keep asking questions, and it's terrifying at times, isn't it?
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Especially if you haven't read the book.
I've definitely had my fair share of moments where I wasn't too prepared, but it happens to everyone in law school.
Me too. Dozens of times. In fact, I think the professor could tell by the fear in your eye, oh, that guy did not read.
Yeah, you can tell.
Some of them just get off on it. They love it.
They love it. Mr. Murdoch.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie The Paper Chase?
No.
All right. That's
or the
going way
TV
back.
series.
Yeah, it was a TV series too. It was who was the old bird in The Paper Chase? What's his?
Was it
his
John
name?
something?
Yeah, Kingsley was his name in the movie, but John Houseman. Yeah.
Thank you.
We've got our fact check. John Houseman was the law professor, but that was back in the days. Now, my buddy went to Thomas Cooley Law School. I think that's closed. That's up in Michigan now. But he transferred into Capitol, and he said, well, these guys, this is easy. Up at Thomas Cooley, we had to actually stand up. Like they would call on you randomly. You would stand up like in the old days and recite the case facts and the rule and what you learned from it. And they would chastise you if you didn't do it.
Bella, have you done moot court?
I have not.
That's coming up, third year? Is it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Look, not to put you on the spot here, but what are you going to do with your law degree? Any thoughts yet?
I'm not completely sure yet. I do like family law. I'm in it now. I find that interesting, but
divorce work?
Yeah.
Adoptions, all that.
Yeah, no. I mean, you can say I'm going to do adoptions, but you're going to do like 3 a year. So divorce work is what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So they don't teach. I have another series called Lawyer Talk. I do a podcast, and one of them now is what they don't teach you, or they don't teach you that in law school. So like you can say I'm going to be an adoption lawyer, but good luck.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you're not going to find any. You're not going
unless you work for an agency. You know, like that's all they do, and you're the staff attorney.
Like if you're a staff attorney or something. But yeah, I mean, family law is. I've never heard anybody. And this is true. I've never heard anybody say, I want to go be a family lawyer.
Really?
Ever. Now, and this is the funny part. My footnote or my response to this question is typically, you're going to do whatever your first job is. You know, that's sort of what it is. And that was true of me. I became a criminal defense lawyer because I walked into a criminal defense law firm one day and got a job as a clerk, and I fell in love with it.
So the stat when I graduated from law school was that, and that was 1985. The stat was that over half of the graduating lawyers that year did not become lawyers. The law school students went into a variety of other things. And the speaker at my graduation ceremony was the head of either Revlon or one of the major cosmetic companies in New York City. And she had graduated from our law school at the bottom of the class. And here she was, CEO of it. And she never practiced a day of law. She went right into the business world and succeeded to the point where she climbed the ladder.
Right.
And so it's a great education for all kinds of things.
Well, let me ask you, because look, my dad was a law professor, and he used to say it's the best education you can get because you're going to learn to do just about everything. And he used to say, I can do what you do, maybe not as well, but I can do what you do, Mr. Accountant or Mr. Business Guy or whatever, but you can't be a lawyer. And he wasn't being a smartass about it. One, because the education is different, and two, because it takes a license and it takes, different things. But I think that is no longer, I think that factually it might be true, but from a economic standpoint, I think it's probably out of reach. Are people going into debt for law school these days?
I would assume.
It's expensive.
Right. Yeah, I know a lot of people have to take out loans, and I would assume majority of them do. I'm
not asking you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to tell us. But
no, you're completely fine. Yeah. No, definitely people are going in debt over it.
And my point is that what's the mean salary now, or the average? Do you know the average salary for lawyers coming out and starting?
It's got to be low, right?
So I think it's plummeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not positive, but especially if you have undergraduate debt also,
Yeah, you come out staring at like $300,000 worth of debt or something.
Right.
That would be insane. And the other thing I want to ask you about is AI. We didn't get to go to use artificial intelligence for our legal research or anything else. In fact, when I started, Norm, you probably still use the decennials in the old books in the library.
Oh, we had no LexisNexis. There were no terminals in the law school.
Yeah,
there was no internet
at the front.
Yeah.
And we learned both. But how does AI play a role in what you're doing? And does anybody talking about, well, wait a minute, all this research now can be done artificially. We don't need these lawyers.
Right. Yeah, the teachers have thrown their concern out there about it, but we use Lexis in our writing classes, and really you're just looking up the terms and it'll bring you to it right away that you almost don't even need AI. But I could see where that would be a concern for law schools.
How do they know? I saw this ad, this TikTok thing, I think, or some short video where this guy, it was obviously a student age guy, selling an app that said it was supposed to defeat AI detection software that the teachers were using.
Oh my goodness.
So it's this cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Wow, three-dimensional chess, Mr. Spock on
you could just write the damn assignment yourself and it would be easier.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, since we brought up Springfield,
let's kick it off.
In your
So Springfield is a small city in Ohio.
Yes.
That's
approximately 80,000 people.
80,000, about an hour west of Columbus, right off I-70, Clark County.
And the early reports were that 20,000 Haitians had been located there by the government under a temporary passport program that allows the president to use his parole authority to bring in populations that he considers at risk. So that's what happened, and it happened in conjunction with DeWine and Biden.
So when does all this happen?
Together. This happened during the last 4 to 5 years, and here we are. They're now saying that because it's kind of like when people, like in Dearborn, Michigan, when a lot of Arabs decide that they're going to have a neighborhood in Dearborn, it attracts more Arabs who come in of their own volition.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. So other Haitian settlement locations around the country, many of the Haitians, about 10,000 more, are said to have come to Springfield beyond the original 20. So they're saying it's more like 30,000, which means basically 1 out of every 3 people you meet in Springfield these days is a Haitian, Which I mean, that's a pretty dramatic.
That's pretty significant, right?
And it's not about hating anybody from any country, or it's not about race. It's just about the culture is so different. Many don't speak English; they speak French, right. or some some kind of variation of French from the Caribbean, and.
Well, the pot's not melting anymore. I think that's really what you're saying. I mean, it's more like we have a bunch of different pots, and they're not melting together.
And to concentrate so many people from one place into a small town like Springfield is, I mean, I'm waving the unfairness flag. It's just sociologically, that just doesn't work. I mean, that's not a way to get people enculturated and get them to, as you say, melt into our culture. It's too many people, and it bowls over the support structure of a city, government, apartment rent, a cost, just everything gets overwhelmed. That's a huge number of people.
Yeah, I mean, for a small town.
Yeah.
So you said, Bella, that you had information, or you were following somebody who was following this before it became. I mean, I didn't know anything about the Haitians in Springfield until like 2 weeks ago or a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching Anthony Harris. He was the one that spoke at the city council meeting. His video kind of went viral. He was in the red sweatshirt.
Yes.
He was on Facebook prior showing all the videos of all the car accidents, flipping cars, and he did a few live streams. So I was kind of keeping up with that a little bit. And then he was also talking about the ducks in the park and how they're cutting the heads off ducks.
So he's the source of all this.
Well, there were a few families. I watched that whole city council meeting, and they were all coming forward, and it was...
By they, you mean like the residents?
Right. Yeah, the families in that community, and just how they're like... just impacted by this. They're camping out in their front yards and throwing mattresses in the front yards, and the families are essentially just packing up and leaving. This is
what the problem is. So look, I don't want to do a deep dive into the debate, the Trump-Harris debate, but Trump brings this up and he goes, well, look, the people are saying it. But on the other hand, I think there's been this sort of whitewashing out of the media that says, look, there's no verification of any of this. The city council has got they're saying, no, we're not going to substantiate. But who is on the ground actually doing something to figure it out one way or another?
So I'm not even interested in misbehavior. So that's not where I'm coming from. I'm just talking about the ability for city services of a small town, and there's a town in Kentucky.
Well, that is the issue, though, right?
Yeah. So I'm not talking about eating ducks or cats. Well, hang on. So I don't care about any of that. That's all nice apocryphal stuff to talk about. But like, there's a small city in Kentucky where they settled more Somalians in that town than there were people in the town beforehand. So, if they get to vote at some point,
it changes everything, right? So what you're talking about is, look, we have a certain infrastructure in place in the town. Sort of, it's not one or the other. It's both sort of seesawing, I would think, at the same time. So as your population grows, the infrastructure and the budget grows, and the tax revenue grows, and you have the ability, or a town or a city has the ability to sort of keep up.
Yes,
but if you just dump a bunch of people in it, it's overwhelmed immediately. It's overwhelmed, and the misbehavior is a result of that, right? You don't have the police on the ground to deal with this. You don't even know how to deal with this because you've never had to. Right. And I don't know what the tax revenue is from a bunch of illegal immigrants, or maybe they are illegal. I don't know.
Well, they were brought in under this parole authority.
So presumably they have some sort of
they have temporary.
Right. So they're not unlawful immigrants.
That's right. They have temporary passports. However, I was listening to Lindsey Graham and Jim Jordan speak about that program. That program in the federal code, that program says that each person who is going to be paroled has to be individually assessed.
And that's
they're
not happening.
Well,
right.
no, they admitted they're not doing it. So Biden didn't do that. They're just not doing it. Now, our governor is from Springfield, and I find it highly interesting that the town that his family is from and that he's from, him and Fran and their progeny, that this is in that town. And I just wonder, what are the possible explanations behind that?
Who's making money?
Right.
I wonder.
Who's making money? Where are these people living? Is it a housing project that's now getting money from the government? Is there a federal subsidy going to somebody?
Well, as Bella mentioned, people are saying that they have left or they're in the process of leaving because they can't afford the apartments anymore because, Section 8 housing, right? That they're going to charge the max that the government's going to reimburse for these.
And that screws up the rental market for everybody.
It screws up the rental market.
Yeah.
And Springfield's not exactly a boom town. It's like where old military people from Wright Pat Air Force Base, for example, would move to Springfield for their retirement because it was
it's right in between Dayton and Columbus.
Less expensive place to live, and
Wittenberg,
a
nice little Division III university there.
Huber Heights, those kinds of places.
Yeah.
So, I got hit on the highway by one of these out of control immigrants where. Again, it was a traffic accident. I'm not saying anything about the person's character or about their race, or I don't even know what country they were from. But now that it's been revealed, I was at the Springfield exit on I-70 when this happened. So it probably was. And at any rate, I think that the other comments from the citizens is that their home insurance rates and their car insurance rates have gone spastic. They've gone nationally. That's a story anyway. But in Springfield now, because of the damage and the claims that are being made, that it has dramatically risen, which increases the cost of living for people living there.
Right.
Who were there before this mass immigration was thrust on them. And what I don't get, my problem with this, I don't get that even if Biden is going to do this, which I disagree with, right? I mean, there are a lot of countries where there are destitute people. I mean, we could import half of Kenya. We could import half of Greece. We could import half of Lebanon. We could import, big chunks of the former Soviet Union. I mean, there are a lot of people who are in desperate financial straits, and we're not importing 20,000 of them and plopping them in small cities. So what I am in disbelief about is that our governor and President Biden and the infrastructure didn't spread these people out. Well,
look,
why didn't they do that? Like Minneapolis has this huge Somali population. Why didn't they put 5,000 there, 5,000 in Toledo, 5,000 in Indianapolis, 5,000 in Denver? Why didn't they spread this out? Why is it taking 20,000 people and putting them in one small city is bizarre to me. It's just, It seems unworkable on the face of it.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I don't have an answer.
Right. I mean, look, I got some speculation. So on one hand, it creates a power base that you wouldn't otherwise have, right? Because the more people, like you said, sooner or later they're going to start voting. Sooner or later they're going to start having some local political control, and it grows from there. And that's sort of what's happening in Minneapolis. What's happening in Dearborn.
Well, in Ilhan Omar.
Yes.
Out of Minneapolis, right?
So look, I mean, if you could, there's probably a constellation that you could connect that people would say, well, that's what their end goal is. But I think probably another. Look, Thomas Sowell. I think he wrote a book called Race and Racism in America, and I think
the famous economist. Just yeah.
But he took apart. This is going a little sideways. But I'll bring it back home. He took apart this notion of segregated living, and apparently he did a study. And I am shooting from memory from a book I read like 7-8 years ago. But he did a study on how people sort when they decide where to live, and it's pretty normal for people sort with their own ethnic background. So you're going to go live with people like you, and the immigrants are going to go live. So you had Italian villages, you had the Greek villages,
Dearborn.
You had the Jewish villages, you had
Arabic.
Even when, these initial immigrants, the Irish, and they would tend to sort, and it takes a long time to sort of break that up.
Yeah.
So there's another argument here. The counter argument is these people are just going where their other people are going, and it makes sense that they're going to sort and choose to live where they are, where their friends went.
Well, that explains the additional 10,000 where they're getting the 30,000 number now. Is they put the initial 20,000 there by government edict, and then another 10,000 said, "Hey, there's a big community of my fellow countrymen."
Right, you're going to be comfortable.
That's
there.
right.
They speak the language,
and it makes sense. It does make sense.
So, and then the counter argument to what we're talking about is how does the pot start to melt? What is the impetus for this?
Right.
And I think in the old days it used to be that we didn't that we, being the country, functioned in a certain United States identifiable way. You know, you spoke English, the classes were taught, and so you just eventually were sort of forced to assimilate. Yeah. But I think the difference now is that doesn't happen as much.
Yeah.
And people aren't forced to assimilate like they used to. So I don't think we're getting the traditional melting pot, at least not as fast as we might have otherwise.
I agree.
I think it used to be one generation away, you were there. If grandma spoke Italian, you didn't even know Italian.
So, you know, the Springfield school system is obligated to educate the children of these 20 to 30,000 Haitian people. And just imagine that. If 1 out of every 3 people in Springfield now is a Haitian who wasn't there before, and they have children, of course they have having children or already had children, think of the hit on Springfield public school system. I mean,
right.
I mean, that's just one small little bit of this. And that's a deleterious impact that the children in Springfield, including these Haitian children, they're just not going to get a great education if the class size goes from 25 or 30 to 60.
Whether it's education, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's housing, whatever it is, it dilutes it in a way that impacts everybody. So it just changes the dynamic for everybody. And I think that was the beef out of the people that you're watching. That was their beef. Mm-hmm. It's like, look, you took our town and changed it overnight,
right?
And we can't function. And I think it's bloated now beyond the resources of the community. Both infrastructure and cash.
So I saw where Governor DeWine dispatched state highway patrol troopers to help to supplement the Springfield City Police and the county over there, to help them enforce the law, like to have some kind of civil order.
Yep.
So now it's a state issue, as well as a federal issue, as well as a local issue. Like this is really, and it became a topic in the debate between the vice president and President Trump. So,
I hate to talk about the debate, but we sort of have to.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think we should. My biggest thing about that debate was, you had one guy debating 3 people.
Exactly.
And and the questions were so like, Mr. Trump, it's well known that you're a racist. What do you think about you being a racist?
Well, sure.
It was, like what kind of questions are?
It was certainly now, unlike the first debate with Biden, I think, which easily could have gone that way, but it didn't. The commentators, I think, did a fine job.
They did a fair job on CNN.
Mm-hmm. So, Bella, what do you think about the debate? Like, if you could say who wins the debate?
I think it went kind of how I expected it to. I think Kamala went in, she memorized her lines. She did exactly what they wanted her to do or what they, nominated her to do when they kicked Biden out. But I do still think Trump won. I think we were all waiting for him to go in and just have a grand slam because all I've seen of Kamala before was like her giggling in all these interviews, and I haven't really heard much from her. But I think she did better than a lot of people expected. But
yeah, I think Kamala,
I still don't think she fully answered a question.
She didn't have to.
Right. Yeah, she could have walked off the stage. No one would have.
She didn't have to.
The moderators would have handled it.
But yeah. I'm with you, Bella. I think the reaction about this debate is still rolling. Mm-hmm. I think people are processing a little bit about this as they think about it. She was asked to explain, for example, her flop on 3 different issues. Mm-hmm. And she said, but I want to talk about this other thing first, and then I'll come back to those. And she never came back to them.
Of course not. But they all do that on the stage. And the problem, that's a moderator problem.
That's a moderator problem. That's why I'm saying he debated 3 people.
In the first debate.
And they fact-checked him. And in fact, their facts were completely wrong.
Yeah, they were wrong. Right.
So for example, the lady commentator whose name I don't know, I'd never seen her on air. I had seen David Muir on air, but the lady commentator fact-checked Trump on the abortion claim that botched abortion babies. There's no state, she said, in which they're allowed to die. Oh, you're completely full of crap, lady. There's about 15 states that allow botched abortion babies who are born. That's a live baby on the table, and you're permitted to let that baby die and not resuscitate.
And Tim Walz spoke out about that.
Yeah.
What did he say about it? He's for that?
That's right.
Yeah.
They have that. They have that.
That's insane.
They have that in Minnesota.
Right.
But so abortion was one of those topics that I think if I'm looking at this, they being Kamala and the moderators scored against Trump on this. Like, he did not come off as and I get it. He was ganged up on a little bit. And
well, he said the truth. He said it's up to the states now.
He said it's up to the states now. But if you, this is like, I just wish I could get in these people's ears and help them, because like Trump's position on it, like he keeps going back to this, that all the scholars, all the people, all the legal, they all wanted it back to the states.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to do that.
No.
What he needs to say is, look, there is a divide in this country about abortion. And anybody who says otherwise is flat out lying to you. So if you're pro-abortion, then you believe that, and that's how it is. And if you're against abortion, you believe that, and that's how it is. And it's pretty close to 50-50, maybe 51-49, whatever it is. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
So when you have an issue like that, Mr. Moderator, what you need to do is give that to the people to figure it out. Instead, what you want to do, what these people want to do, what they want to do is cram it down on everybody, and that feels very authoritarian and very dictatorian. Is that a right word? Dictatorian from the federal government. And if the federal government is cramming down in a local place some viewpoint that I don't agree with, it feels like...
Well, that's what Roe v. Wade did.
That's what Roe v. Wade did.
It was the federal government
What our
dictating.
court did, hand-selected, if that's the word you want to use, because the president does have the authority to pick Supreme Court justices. So call it hand-selected, but when they pick justices, it's also hand-selected.
Of course.
What our court did is they referred this back to the states so we could figure it out, so the people could figure it out, so each individual state could figure it out, and they're figuring it out in their own way. And it's going to. And Trump sort of made this point, but.
Well, he directly asked Kamala.
Then he goes too far.
Are you in favor of any restrictions?
And well, they didn't force her to ask.
She wouldn't answer that.
Yeah.
He said, "What about the 8th month? What about the 9th month? What about the day of the birth? Can you still get an abortion right, before the baby naturally is born?" And she wouldn't answer that question. But the commentator or the moderators didn't follow that up.
And look, Kamala was well prepared for this, and she did it. Her tactic worked. Like, she criticized Trump on his rallies and how many people were there and where the rallies were, and she immediately got in his kitchen.
Well, she outright lied about Charlottesville. I mean, that old...
I don't think that works anymore, though. I think that's bullshit.
The moderators needed to point that out. They needed to fact-check her. No, Trump didn't say that white supremacists and skinheads are good people.
Does anybody really think this anymore, though?
That's not what he said. He was talking about people who are on both sides of whether a monument should be in the town square. He wasn't talking about the protesters, for God's sake.
But if you're Trump responding to that, it's like, why are you bringing up this? Why are you bringing this up again? Isn't it now been completely debunked what I said? Yet you're bringing it up here. What are you trying to get people to think? Do you want to talk about the real issues, or do you want to talk about this trope that you and Biden keep slinging at me that's been debunked 100 times? And you moderators, why aren't you calling her on it?
That's what
That's what I would have said. I would have, if they're going to debate me, I would have debated them.
So Newt Gingrich won South Carolina when he took on John King of CNN and said, "Hey, John, do you want to run for president? I mean, why don't you come up here? You seem to have a lot of opinions that you want to say are my opinions. So why don't you moderate, or you run for president also? Pick one or the other." And then Newt won the South Carolina.
Right. So if I were in Trump's shoes, that's how I'd handle it. And
absolutely.
Look, this is what they teach you in law school. This is what the Socratic method teaches you.
Absolutely.
When you start getting barraged with that crap, you learn how to deal with it.
Exactly right.
And it's difficult because you feel criticized, you feel inferior, you feel like you're under attack.
Right.
But the law school method teaches you and conditions you to deal with that. So when you have a judge coming at you, you can be respectful and at the same time give it right back. Right. It's like, no. Why is that question being asked of me? So why ask me that question when you're not asking her these questions? I feel like this debate isn't fair. I feel like I'm debating you and Miss Harris.
Right.
What say you, CNN or NBC or ABC? What say you to that?
Well, she rolled out a number of things. She had a lot of economic plan gimmicks. I'm going to give small business people in their first year of startup a $50,000 deduction.
Well,
I'm going to give new parents who have their first baby $6,000. All of this, Santa Claus stuff. instead of that's not going to fix the economy.
That's not even going to come close.
Yeah, I'm going to tips. I'm not going to tax tips. She stole that from Trump. All that kind of stuff. It's all ticky-tacky, meaningless, feel-good stuff that you would say on The View, maybe.
So you know
to get a bunch of dummies to go, oh, you care about us.
Bella, here's what I think. When I hear she's going to give small businesses a $50,000 deduction, I'm thinking, I think Common Sense Ohio is a small business.
Oh, jeez.
Right? So, and I wonder if we can take a deduction here as a loss and then apply it to other parts or other businesses I have in my livelihood. See, but this is what, and the point of this is as soon as you create policies and programs like that, people abuse the crap out of it.
Mm-hmm. Of course they do.
And it's not going to be the people who need the money. It's going to be the people who abuse it to get a deduction that they can apply somewhere else. And it's probably going to be people that support her because that's why she's doing it.
You also saw the big payoff of the Democrats' lawfare against Trump in all of these legal cases. When Kamala was able to say, oh, I'm the only person up here on stage who hasn't been convicted of a felony. And, you're over there and you've been successfully pursued in civil court for sexual assault. No, all of these things that have been conjured up and manipulated, the fruition came true during the debate.
So if I'm Trump, you just turn around and say, you are 100% correct. And I'm the only political target ever to be prosecuted by my political rivals.
By your administration.
Right, by my political rivals. And I think, yes, I have been convicted of felony, but more important, more dangerous is the fact that your DOJ did it.
That's right. At your behest.
At your behest.
Right.
So
Fonnie Willis came up to visit the White House, I think,
Why don't we talk about will you release all the communication between you and all these local prosecutors about my prosecutions?
Right.
Will you talk to us about that? Will you tell CNN that? Will you tell ABC that?
Right.
I bet you won't.
Right. Why am I being pursued for records keeping violations?
See, he didn't need to go there though, because everybody knows that. So again, if I'm directing Trump, I wouldn't have to go there.
But your administration, your president, did worse. He didn't even have presidential immunity in his garage next to his Corvette.
I got you, but I wouldn't. He doesn't. But that's everybody knows that. So, but you have to point it out. It's like, I am curious what interaction you had with DOJ with respect to any of my prosecutions. Will you release all those documents, or are you just going to stand up here and say none?
The other very pregnant kind of question that could have paid off well was when David Muir said, "Well, let's talk about truth telling." In America, that America has a trouble with the truth. And that was a beautiful, and then he, of course, launched into J6. But that was an opportunity for Trump to talk about all of the social media censorship by the FBI, Department of Justice, CIA, CDC, Department of Homeland Security, that has been admitted to by Zuckerberg, has been admitted to by Elon Musk's Twitter releases, that our federal government, under you, Kamala, and Joe, have tried to silence discussion that you don't want us to have by the American. So you want to talk about truth telling, right? You won't let us even talk about the truth. You're suppressing us.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean,
which to me is the biggest story. I mean, First Amendment. You don't have First Amendment, you don't have anything.
Well, no, that's right. But again, Trump needs a better answer to the J6. Like I'm surprised he wasn't prepared for that. Do you regret anything about January 6th? It's a loaded question.
I regret it happened, but I didn't cause it to happen.
Right.
I regret World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. I regret a lot of things happened.
So you have to be able to dice that question up. Yeah. And again, and this is a law school.
Right.
Like you have to say, you have to call them for calling you on that question. Look, I've answered lots of questions about January 6th.
Sure.
Why are you asking me about that now? But since you did, yes, I regret that January 6th happened. But the way you asked that question, you're sort of implying that it was all my fault. That's not true.
It wasn't his fault at all. Nancy Pelosi's on camera admitting it's her fault.
And to the extent that you're trying to assess sole blame on me, you're doing it to the exclusion of anybody else you could blame. So this is a cliche attack. And if you want to go down that rabbit hole, why don't we schedule a news conference to do it? But today, I think everybody wants to hear about her and my views on what we are going forward. Like he should have that answer in his back pocket.
Well, and in fact,
I didn't. I just made it up.
He has not been charged nor prosecuted in any way for insurrection at all. None of the charges against Trump.
Oh, that's right.
None of it involves insurrection charges. So it's all just bullshit. And he did mention that Nancy Pelosi admitted that it was her fault in her daughter's own movie.
Yeah, none of that's catching. So part of me thinks that none of this is going to move the needle at all.
I don't think it will.
I mean, where do you think? What's your prediction on the polls going forward?
The inside polling, according to the Trump campaign, now, they're a biased source, so we'll find out. I think it's still rolling out. They say he got a 3-point bounce out of this debate.
I did hear that.
I don't think we know yet. I don't think we know. I think she's going to get a little bit of a bump, but who knows?
I think you're right. I think actually you're right. I don't think there'll be a result for either one of them. No. I think it was a draw.
Yeah, I don't even know if it was a draw. I think Kamala won. Like if I'm looking at debate performance,
no, I mean for the campaign.
For the campaign, right? If I'm looking at debate performance, I have to give it to Kamala. I mean, look, she was well prepared. Now, it wasn't necessarily fair for Trump because he had 3 people he was debating, and they were. And it's not even that they were pushing back on him. That's fine. Yeah. But they weren't pushing back on her.
No.
And I think Bella, what you said is all her laughing and cackling and stupid mannerisms. It occurs when people push back on her.
Well, her haughty, arrogant appearance, when she would look over at him and go, it was like a wife and a husband in the kitchen bitching about each other.
But look, let's talk about this, though. You just said
I want the thermostat up. No, I want it down. And then she looks at you like that. You look back at her. It was just ridiculous, the whole thing.
I really don't know if her poll numbers will go up, though, because the 3 main issues that people are concerned about, the border, economy, crime, Trump is leading by so much in the polls over that. And the only issue that she was very passionate about on the stage was abortion. And I think we expected that from her, but we really wanted to hear her stance on the border and the economy, and she just did not.
Yeah, she has nothing substantive on those things.
She did not answer well.
I don't think the needle's going to move. We don't necessarily in America elect the best debater. They say Richard Nixon won the debate against John Kennedy if you listen to it on the radio.
But on TV he didn't.
But on TV he didn't.
Yeah.
And yet Kennedy won.
Well, look, but here's what I think we don't necessarily elect the best debater, but we do, I think, often elect the people that we like.
He looked way more serious.
He looked pissed off. She got in his kitchen a little bit. He was fired up. He was a little bit emotional. He had the adrenaline running.
Well, he spoke about some issues like possible World War III. We right now have Anthony Blinken meeting with NATO, today to discuss whether or not NATO long-range weapons will be allowed to go deep inside Russia.
Right.
So you got NATO, in effect, using Ukraine as a proxy to attack Russia. Russia's got nukes. Can you imagine them bombarding, and they have hit targets in Moscow, but if they really start bombarding Moscow, I think Putin's going to push a button, man.
Mm-hmm. So, Bella, what's your take on this? Because I think
crazy.
Here's the big picture. I think Trump was right on these big picture issues. I think he was right about what you're talking about in the world. I think he was right about what's going on in the borders. I think he's right about what's going on in the economy. But I think the message, he doesn't necessarily deliver the message very well. And what's the take in your age group about how people really feel about that? Because I sort of feel like people don't give a crap about the issues. They just vote. They're like, I'm going to go with Kamala, and here they can't even say why. And maybe the people voting for Trump, I think a lot of them are just because they hate Kamala. But I mean, what's your take on, do people really care about those issues?
I think so. I think I'm getting older, and I'm eventually going to graduate school in about 2 years here, and these issues matter. And I think Trump isn't the best at debating. I've said that for years. I think he tries to fit too many points in one, and he gets lost, and it's hard for just average Americans to know what he's talking about or to keep up with him. But I think the younger generation, we've lived through Trump, and now we're living through Biden, and we could just see the difference in everyday life. So I think those like the crime and economy, they matter more than people think. Like,
well, it's sort of like fish don't know they're swimming in water, right? I mean, it's like we had it great. And you know, Norm, this is going back. How old were you? I'm not going to ask how old you are, but I think there's a generation that didn't understand that the Obama years sucked from an economic standpoint because they didn't have to worry about it. You know, they were in school or their parents had to worry about it, whatever. But it was like a regulatory nightmare. I mean, it just sucked.
Right.
And then Trump comes along. And it's like unleash. You know, it's like holy crap. Right. We were all eating
drill, baby, drill,
rainbow stew,
all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And you know, things were good. Yeah. We were having you know, we were everybody was making money. Things were just great. And I think your generation sort of smoothed right through that without understanding the difference between what it was before and what it was during Trump.
Right.
And maybe what worries me is that, well, maybe not. Maybe I think what you're saying is now they see, wait a minute, it sort of sucks now.
Right. Yeah. Kamala could say as many times as she wants that the economy's great and we don't have a border issue at all, but we're living through it and we could see through the lies that we clearly have an issue with the economy. People are struggling to put food on the table at night. So I think
but isn't
it
that
comes
just price
down
gouging?
to that.
That's price gouging.
Right.
Like what do people? But I'm serious. That trope seems to work with people. It's price gouging.
Sherrod Brown's using that.
And I always say my response is, well, why did they decide to start price gouging with Biden and Harris at the White House when they weren't price gouging before?
Right.
Like why now?
Right. And what are you waiting for? If you have all these brilliant ideas here in, you know, August just ended, here in early September, you know, mid-September, you know, what are you waiting for?
But
why don't you go, like Trump said in the debate, why don't you waddle on down to Washington, D.C., to the White House, and have Biden sign all these wonderful ideas that you're espousing?
Right. Those were his moments where he scored some points.
Yeah.
It should have been his position the entire time.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know. What is your take on the youth's understanding of these issues, like really in depth? Because we were talking off the air before where you'd see these videos on TikTok where they'll go stick a microphone and a camera in some kid's face and say, who are you voting for, Kamala? What policies do you like? And it's crickets. They don't even know.
They don't know.
And I suppose you could do the same thing with people who say they're voting for Trump. It's like, do you have an idea of what the in-depth understanding is of it? Or I mean, some of those are probably just cut out too. They're only picking the funny ones.
Yeah, I think definitely the school systems are very left-leaning, so the younger generation is just indoctrinated into that, and they think the main issues in the world are just abortions, and that seems to be people's main concern, or at least girls. When I've talked to girls, they'll admit things were better under Trump, you know, day-to-day life, things were more affordable, and like crime was better, but they'll be like, I just can't vote for him because of the abortion thing. So it's just such a heavy topic, and
which is interesting because he's not really against it. Like his position on it, I don't agree with it.
No.
That's what I don't get. He's not even pro-life, so I don't really understand where this is coming from.
And Ohio has a much more radical pro-abortion
he even mentioned
constitutional
Ohio,
amendment.
Yeah, I think it's just the tactics of the media, just constantly Kamala saying time after time, Trump's abortion ban, Trump's abortion ban.
He's going to sign a bill. He's going to sign a scary bill.
Yeah,
you know. And he said, no, I'm not going to sign any such bill.
Right. People my age aren't taking the time to, you know, research it and actually see what Trump's about. They're just seeing the headlines like Trump's abortion ban, and it scares them, and then they take it and run.
You know, Bella, one of the issues that I thought the students would really get drawn in by, and they seem to see through it, mainly that it was a tactic to just buy their votes, was the school debt forgiveness.
So let's hear your take on that.
Yeah, because you must be hearing that, both having been an undergrad and now you're in law school, you must be talking to students that owe money. And I don't think they're really buying that the federal government's ever really going to disgorge discard their debt, like say, broadly, you know, they've picked specific populations and situations, but they haven't been able to get past the Supreme Court, the Biden administration, to just do a wide debt forgiveness.
Right.
Right.
I never thought that would actually happen. When they first proposed that, I figured even if they did, there would be stipulations with it, you know, so many years or, you know,
or a different color.
Right. You're right. Yeah, I figured there would be a lot of different requirements you have to meet to get even some
that was the other thing Trump could have.
So
he could have jumped in on that race thing. You know, it's like, I'm obsessed with race. How about you guys?
Exactly.
Like, you have to be a certain color and gender to get federal benefits.
Right.
What could be more racist than that?
Right.
You know, but
so I think
you think the students, they're not falling for it?
I don't think anymore. Okay. No, I think it did tempt people at first. I did hear that from a few friends, but
I heard it from my son.
That didn't last long. So
I mean, the Supreme Court's knocked him down twice.
Right.
And it's like, oh, yeah, maybe Congress does need to authorize this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like unfair. My parents saved for my college since the day I was born.
Right.
And it's just.
And they sacrificed.
Right.
They didn't buy a boat.
Right.
You know, they didn't go on luxurious
there's a lot they could have done, but their main concern was getting us through school, me and my sisters. So, I think it's kind of unfair that some parents, plan for that and set money aside, and then others don't, and then they're just.
And graduates, some students really work at repaying early, and they'll pay off their $100,000 or $300,000 or whatever it is in the first 10 years of their career. They pay that, and then how fair is that to them, having paid that back? And the guy who's just lounging on the sofa in mom's basement, who hasn't paid it back, they just magic wand.
Right.
You don't know that.
I think also they're maybe encouraging too many people to go to school now, just in, high school counselors and stuff, that we don't have enough people just out doing, labor every day.
Well, it's not celebrated, right? The trades aren't celebrated at all. That's
well, and where's the help for them? Like, if you're going to help the wealthier families that are sending their kids to school, to college, then why aren't you helping the blue collar families who kid wants to be a plumber or a roofer? Why aren't you buying him a van and a bunch of his tools?
Yeah, where's the subsidy?
There's no equity.
Where's the subsidy for the Snap-on guy?
Yeah. That's right.
Because any mechanic knows that the Snap-on guy comes around. You have some of these guys, they're $30,000 in debt.
Oh yeah,
for Snap-on tools.
Yeah, on a rotating monthly basis, they're paying interest.
Snap-on guy comes around, need this, need that, and it's like it's a game, and they get no help for that at all. So
do I have time to impeach Governor DeWine?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
and then we got to wrap it up.
So Governor DeWine isn't the most favorite governor here on this program, and I wish to point out something. He's a Republican. Okay, I'm a Republican. This is a Republican bashing a Republican. Take note, people. Take note. See, we're fair-minded here. I don't give a crap what your party is or who you're voting for. I deal in facts. And the fact is that Governor DeWine exploited, knew ahead of time, helped arrange with, and has done public appearances with this Haitian bomb that was dropped on his hometown of Springfield. That's count number one. He knew it ahead of time. He did not tell us. He did not give the people of Springfield any kind of vote or say-so in the matter. They were simply victims of a decision made by His Highness here in Columbus about what their lives were going to be like without them having any kind of democratic, small d, say-so as to that happening. He did that with Intel out in eastern Columbus, New Albany, Johnstown area. Same thing. There were no zoning meetings. There were no advertisements that Intel's coming. It was just dropped like an atom bomb on the citizens of Ohio. Like it or not, the skids are greased. Intel's going to be in your backyard, whether you want to breathe the fumes coming out of their smokestacks or not. Whether you want, they're going to add 400,000 new residents in Licking County because of Intel. Yet not a single person in Licking County, except the other Republicans and some of the Democrats who signed NDAs, they're the only people who got to know about it ahead of time. Another thing, he gaslights us. So over in Springfield, this Haitian who was drunk, who drove a school bus into a ditch, which rolled and killed an 11-year-old boy, right? What does DeWine do? He says, I'm going to appoint a blue ribbon commission to study safety aspects of school buses, when that is not the proximate cause of how the accident occurred. The proximate cause is the unfettered immigration, whether it's illegal or by this parole program, of people into the country who, A, don't have driver's licenses, don't have insurance, and are just driving vehicles. And that's what killed that boy. And it's not hate to say so. So his parents are very liberal and have come out and say, quit using our son's death. Hey, I'm not using your son's death, right? Even if you don't think that your son's death was caused by immigration policy, I'm allowed to think that, and I don't hate anybody. I love Haitians, and it has nothing to do with where they come from, what their race is, what language they speak. I'm just talking about that death would not have happened but for the immigration policy. Some of the other things, the COVID policies of His Highness for DeWine, a Republican House member filed articles of impeachment during COVID against DeWine because of his illegal shutdown of things like schools and restaurants. And I don't think we should forget that. And lastly, and Brett has brought this up, there seems to be some tie-in with First Energy and their passage of debt relief on the nuclear plants up there that First Energy owns. And while it hasn't sullied Mike DeWine, it has sullied the former Speaker of the House, Larry Householder, and other people. And I wonder how high it goes. You know, that has not fully been addressed about people because DeWine signed the bill. He signed the bill that gave First Energy. Right. Yeah. So was it just on good policy reasons, or was there perhaps some, some other benefits?
All I know. Did you get your call yet, by the way, Bella?
No.
From DeWine?
No.
to understand what you need and what your household's like and really figure out what's in your best interest. Because when he shut down the entire damn state, he said he was doing it for everybody's best interest.
Right.
I'm still waiting on my call.
Yeah,
exactly.
So he could get to know me to figure out what my interests actually are.
Right.
And we did it. Remember, Norm? As we have done it before.
As an excellent law student knows well, our country is built on the basis, our Constitution, which Constitution Day was just a few days ago, our Constitution is based on individual rights, not collective rights.
Yeah, and on purpose.
And for him to worry about whether or not I get sick, hey, dude, that's my decision.
Yeah,
that's my. That's my decision. And if I want to protect my family by having, Uber bring me food and drop it on the porch, and then I wait for the van to leave, and then I go out and get my food, and I just stay in the house for 3 years, that's up to me. Or I can not wear a mask and go to Kroger.
Well, he knows what's in your best interest, right. Norm. He knows.
So think of how absurd
He's
that
from
was.
Springfield.
Remember restaurants that had those plexiglass dividers?
So
somehow,
who made money on the plexiglass?
Somehow diners were very dangerous when they entered the restaurant and had the mask. They had to have the mask on because they were dangerous then. But as soon as they sat down, they could pop the mask off. And suddenly they're not.
We have the tools.
What the hell?
I remember this speech. We have the tools. We've done it before. We can do it again, which is really what he's saying. I'm going to shut your asses down again and not let you earn any money while I get paid.
Yeah.
So anybody, don't even get
all
me.
The big
we can talk about COVID again. But the same question or the same thing I told everybody else was, when you don't get a paycheck for the next 6 months, you can come talk to me about this.
So this Haitian thing, guys, it just. To me, it's the last straw. The guy's got to go.
He's impeached. All right. Well, look.
He's impeached.
Bella, thanks for showing up. Hopefully we get to see more of you in the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Norm.
I'm always a bad guy.
Right. No, he's not a bad guy. He is, but he's not. Anyway, so this is Common Sense Ohio, commonsenseohioshow.com. And I should probably ask you got some social media presence?
Yeah.
Do you want to share it, or you want to keep yourself private? Sure.
My Instagram, TikTok, it's just Bella Matta.
Bella Matta.
Spell your last name so they can find it.
BELLAMATTA.
Okay.
We'll get you up on all the stuff. But thanks for coming in. We'd love to have you back. We'd love to work with you here at commonsenseohioshow.com.
One last thing, Steve.
All right.
This is great. I encourage you guys and our audience, go see this movie, Reagan,
Was it good?
I saw it a couple days ago. Went to a matinee. Fantastic. And to your point, a lot of people didn't live that are alive today, weren't around then, right? Weren't even born yet. And it will show you coming out of Vietnam, coming out of that depressed state of affairs with Jimmy Carter and the hostages.
Very similar time right now.
Very similar time, you know, that.
But Trump's not Reagan. That's the problem.
Well, he's patriotic. And that was the thing about Reagan that really.
Let's love our country again.
It made love of your country cool.
Yep.
You know, and it's a good movie. So I recommend it.
And Dennis Quaid, I've heard him talk about this a lot. He's been interviewed all over social media.
He did a great job.
But I heard his performance was phenomenal.
And it's also a love story for those that want a little romance in the movie. Nancy and Ron, it really does explain their marriage.
But that book we read by, was it Amity Shea wrote the book, The Great Society, that we read about it started. There's a lot of Reagan history in there from his days at GE and sort of emerging in from the Democrat side to more conservative. He was
a Democrat.
Yeah. And at any rate, it's
and a union head.
Yeah.
AFL-CIO.
Yeah. Really, really fascinating guy. So anyway, CommonSenseOhioShow.com here with Bella Matta, where you can check her out on all her social media sites. I guarantee they're a lot more interesting than ours.
No.
But we hope to work with you again going forward.
Yeah, thank you.
And
we don't get to have a Browns-Bengals debate because they were both awful last weekend.
Oh, they were terrible.
So I'm from Cincinnati.
Okay.
Bengals, you got to be a Browns fan. Pittsburgh?
No, I guess I just don't really keep up with football, to be quite honest with you. I grew up with all sisters, so.
Okay. Well, good. We're not going to. We won't have any arguments then.
I've been to a few games, but.
Okay.
All right. Well, we are coming at you next week, right from the middle, and this week we are done until now.